Deadpool and Wolverine was a movie I honestly didn't have that much excitement for after seeing the trailers. Don't get me wrong, I really liked the first Deadpool movies and I think the second one is genuinely great. I think it's the best looking one, it has incredible action and some great gags. But Deadpool and Wolverine looked more akin to the Disney MCU movies shot in the volume that we've been recently getting. But to my surprise, this movie is way better than I thought it would be. The action right off the bat is great, the movie made me laugh out loud at several times, I forgot how much I loved just seeing Hugh Jackman play Wolverine, and throughout seeing Deadpool and Wolverine going on this silly adventure though, I kept thinking of how this movie should be a lot better than it actually is. And don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to come from this movie at the angle of, oh, this is the worst thing ever made. That's not the point. This movie isn't awful, but it also doesn't live up to its full potential. And the most fascinating part about that is that the movie actually addresses that. Now, in case you don't know, Deadpool and Wolverine is the third Deadpool movie, but it clearly sets itself up as the MCU version of a Deadpool movie, as it very clearly tries to move away from being a Fox movie, but also having a lot of the Fox X-Men films so clearly still in its DNA. So the film has to do a lot of exposition early on to show how Deadpool is going to work in the MCU, and how he's going to have to integrate into a world that doesn't really need him, unlike his old universe. But since this is a multiversal story with huge sprawling storylines and different characters and different versions of all of these characters, it's going to end up bringing a lack of stakes though within the main story that the first two films didn't have to deal with. Like in those movies, if a character's dead, they're just going to stay dead, mostly. But if a character in this movie gets killed off, whatever, we can just go to another dimension, grab another one from dimension Bleebor Beta Prime. This movie though understands that problem and instantly points it out, saying this movie is not going to be one with actual stakes. Like Deadpool literally says this to the camera, like, don't get too excited, this story doesn't matter. And this is easily the most annoying part of any of the Deadpool movies, because all three of them have done this. When you know your screenplay has a problem, you can't just say, yeah, we know this kinda sucks, just deal with it, because then why don't you go and fix it? So minor spoilers here for the basic setup of the film, but basically Mr. Darcy is trying to blow up Deadpool's timeline, and Deadpool's trying to save it. So the big problem is, the only people that Deadpool cares about in his life are all gonna die when they get obliterated in the timeline. The problem is though, all the characters from the first two films that we know and love and actually want to see survive are barely in the movie, and they're only relegated to basically one scene in the first act. And with how much commotion and crazy characters and cameos we get, and Wolverine being a main character, we really do forget about them as they get lost in the shuffle. The movie would be a lot more impactful if we saw how the danger could really kill the only people Deadpool loves. And also, if they were just a much larger part of the story. These were main characters in the first two films, and they're just completely sidelined. Instead, it swaps out these characters for side cameo characters that go on our adventure, and they don't really add anything to the story other than it's cool that they're there, I guess, for nerds to look at. And don't get me wrong, I like cameos, but I like cameos that serve a purpose. These characters have no reason really to be here other than it's cool to see them. And it kinda sucks because the movie has clearly subbed out the core heart of what makes the Deadpool movies work to instead just put these characters in so that the movie can appeal to a larger demographic. The Deadpool movies have always been a cast of island of misfit toys. If you're an X-Men that isn't popular enough to be in the real X-Men movies, you're probably in a Deadpool movie. And that leads to there being a true heart at the middle of both of the first two films. And Deadpool and Wolverine tries to do this and really tries to give this story somewhat of an emotional core with the obligatory third act flashback. And the crazy part is that it almost works. From the surprisingly good performances from Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool and the great performance from Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, they're almost able to stick the landing here. But this type of multiverse story just didn't have the heart that the first two films had, and there wasn't really anything to fight for. It's too bad because I think other than that, it's a pretty cool movie. I mean, the action is a lot better than I thought it would be. The whole bye 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 action scene is so funny. Hugh Jackman is genuinely brilliant, and I love him so much as Wolverine, even if the visuals at times are pretty horrific. And overall, it is still a fun time and a fun Deadpool movie. But I just wish they focused more on the heart at the center of this film, instead of going for easy cameos that are only really fun on a first watch. And the reason I bring all of this up is because Logan's story though in this movie is really strong, and that's the most disappointing part. They show that they clearly understood that they could have made a grounded story for Deadpool that worked in the multiverse setting because Logan's story is so great. His one monologue scene of how he think he failed is genuinely the best scene in the entire movie, and I think that showed that there could have been a lot more of an emotional core at the center of this movie for the Merc with a Mouth. And I know I'm gonna be in the minority. I'm the only person who probably is like, hey, why doesn't Deadpool have an emotional core in his story? Because, you know, this is just supposed to be a crowd pleaser, even if I think at the end of the day, it's a pretty empty one. So yeah, I don't think this lives up to the first two films, but I hope with the inevitable Deadpool 4 that will come out, that they focus on the heart of what makes the Deadpool movies so great, and that's the bizarre heart that these films have. And that's Colossus. Where was he? he? How did we not get, like, any scenes with him? He's, like, the best character in these movies. It's a travesty. Like, guys, what are we doing? Add him and Dopinder and Negasonic Teenage Warhead into the lineup again with Wolverine. We got a real movie. There you go, Marvel. Send me the check.